But since I'm on here, it is a good twist. But since I'm on here and I literally binged Record of Ragnarok, I'm gonna have just a quick discussion slash review since this is over. If y'all haven't even watched it yet, go ahead. These are gonna be spoilers to all of you guys. So if y'all leave, cool. I'm gonna record it and then put it on YouTube anyways. So I watched Record of Ragnarok. See you, Blaine. See, first of all, what I want everybody to know is that don't listen to the YouTubers, to anybody. If you want to watch something, go ahead and watch it because the first thing that you're going to see on YouTube was when I searched it, it was trash. It wasn't good. You shouldn't watch it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, was it a masterpiece? No, it was not a masterpiece. Um, it was average at best. If you want to watch it, there are glaring flaws in it. You would think that they didn't have the budget that they needed to actually do what they wanted to do with it. But I mean, let's just break it down into story, action, and then maybe like a ranking, right? Story wise, I think the premise of the story was a good one. You have gods from different pantheons, Greek, had I think that's all some like Mayan, Nordic, Hindu. You have all these different gods all in the same place living in the same time. So they're all there. Then you have against the humans, right? The humans who are infamous, maybe you can call them notorious, that everybody's going to know by name. So you got in this one you have Adam, the first man, you have Lubu, which technically I didn't know very much about Lubu besides I think he was in God of High School. And then you have uh Thor, and then you have the samurai. Not samurai, but basically the swordsman, which I've heard of him. Basically, I've heard of him, but they do a very good job in this of explaining the gods, where they came from, their motivations for what they're doing, and then they do the same thing for the humans. But here's the thing about the story, right? The story drags on. For the first three episodes, you have Lubu versus Thor, and I'm like, bro, number one, if you're going to have a story that goes that long and you keep going back into the past and you are showing what happened to Thor, you're showing what happened to Lubu in the past. And Lubu got so bored that he got himself killed, right? Or wanted to kill himself, so he hung himself. Or got himself hung. Whatever. Case he's dead, right? Then you have the fight go on. Then you go back to Lubu's backstory to show him as a kid. Then the fight goes on some more. Then you go back to Lubu's backstory again to show that he trained over and over again with a spear, with hundreds of spears, just to show his final attack. And I was sitting there like, why are they dragging the story on and on and on? It's only 12 episodes, and I think the first fight is like what, 3 or 4. I was like, they're dragging this fight out. But then when I get into Discord, they're saying there's only 50 chapters of the manga to begin with, or ever in existence. Only 50. So you're thinking like, yes, the story might be good, and yes, it might be a good adaptation to the manga. I haven't read it, but people are saying it's a good adaptation to it. They're trying to spread out a 50 chapter manga and make it a Netflix series, which that doesn't translate very well, right? Because you take a fighting manga and then you add so much story elements that it slows down the pace of what you're watching so dramatically. You're like, I almost got bored a little bit, to be honest with you. The only thing that kept me going was the fact that I love like mythology. I've done plenty of reports growing up on Zeus and like Thor and all these Greek gods. I was engaged in it in that aspect. And then you put the human aspect, superpowers, and then fighting. Yes. So when it comes to story element, like I'll give it a 7. No, story element, I'll give it an 8. A little bit too much. You can tell they're trying to do fillers in there. I'll give a story element an 8. Now, the action. This is supposed to be an action anime, right? So if you're selling me on the action, you can't have fights that have up and down animations. You can tell where they paid somebody to do some really good animation. But then at the same time, you have the same fight and you have still images of this fight going on where you show a punch and then only thing you're doing is moving the same still image across the screen. You're like, okay, the animation is all over the place. What are you actually trying to show us? And it seemed to be so kind of jarring. They go back and forth, say, okay, we're having good animation here, and then you go to a panel to where it looks kind of average, and then you go from to that to a panel of good animation, and then you go to a still shot, and you're like, okay, you're throwing me like the hypeness off by being so jarring with the animation. And then another thing I just really didn't like when it came to the animation and what they did was the comedy. The comedy was off. The comedy of that was like the timing was off. Like they would put jokes in there and have like the one piece, the snot coming out, and they screaming somebody's name. The comedy just didn't work. The timing was off. I'm not sure who was the director that put the comedy in the places that he did, and maybe that's how it was in the manga. But the comedy was definitely off, and it kind of took me out of the experience. But at the same time, the last thing when it comes to the fighting is they really came up with the same formula. Like they have a god versus a human. You have the human having the advantage. The god brings out his next form, his higher form, his more muscular form or something, and then the human loses. The first two fights that happens, and I'm sitting here like, bro, like you just did the same thing for two fights. Yes, the fights were interesting enough, but then at the same time you did it twice. You had the crowd react the same way to both fights. And then we get to the third fight, even though, spoiler alert, once again, the human wins the third fight. He only wins the third fight because Poseidon, the god, just looked down on him so much that he pretty much let his guard down and got sliced open. Well, both arms sliced off and then his head basically, like, it was pretty brutal. At the same time, if he just went full power to begin with or gave the guy some respect, he wouldn't have won that fight either. So, I mean, I'm not sure. People are telling me that the actual manga is a must read. You should go read the manga, and the manga's a lot better. I'm not sure how. If they're saying the adaptation is pretty accurate. I mean, look, as much as I complain about it, that's just what I do. I nitpick everything. But, I mean, I would give it, on my rating scale, a 7. I couldn't recommend anybody to watch it, but it's not as bad as everybody's saying it is. It has its flaws. They need more of a budget to make it what it's supposed to be. If they had more of a budget, then it would have been great. You might have better bump that 7 up to an 8, 8.5. But I think the story, as interesting as it is, I don't think that there is enough fighting, per se, to justify what they were making it out to be. But anyways, that's the end of this review, guys. That's the end of the stream. Thanks everybody for joining. I will see you guys later. Oh yeah, if you're on YouTube, don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe. Go look at the Patreon. Plenty of content on there also that I cannot put on YouTube. Peace. We out.